we're back talking about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles, released in 1967, and we're on side 2 of this album, starting with George Harrison's main contribution, other than playing on this album, Within You Without You. What did you think of that, Garrett?
This song is so cool.
Yes.
I love it because now we already know from Revolver and Rubber Soul even before that George liked his Indian stuff, with the sitar on Norwegian Wood, and then he would bring it in for Love You Too and other songs. And so when it comes with this song, which is almost entirely Indian instruments, and you don't really expect it to be good when I describe it like that. But then you get the lyrics to it, and the way that George sings with it, and the way that the song builds and adds more instruments to it, and it's just, it is so good, and my brain explodes with the awesomeness that this song can be.
So good.
Do you have anything to add, Becca?
So good. It just sounds so cool. Just all of those instruments. I just love the sound that George went for that. Like it's such an interesting musical influence. Just the whole Indian style and instrumentation and everything. I personally love it.
Right. I had to say, this song has grown tremendously on me, and I stress tremendously because when this song came on, I usually would skip it. I'm sorry. But as a kid, I couldn't get into the whole Indian thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked Love You Too, but that was on Yellow Submarine, the movie, so I didn't mind it. But this one, I thought it was done way too over the top. I was like, where are the other Beatles? I was like, that's not fair. But it has grown on me tremendously, and again, you mentioned the lyrics, Garrett. George was like, what, 24 when he wrote those?
Something like that.
Lyrics. I mean, I'm almost 20, and I can't even write lyrics that good.
No.
I think it's recorded so well, beautifully sung too, and the reason why I say it grew on me because I didn't really get what he was talking about until, again, I go back to the Love album when they mixed it with Tomorrow Never Knows, and you get the drum beat the whole way through.
Okay, yeah, that
was cool. I like that one.
Right, that's what sold me because the original I couldn't really find a beat to it because I think the song's like in 5/4, some weird Indian time signature like that. So I couldn't really groove to it, but with the straight 4/4 on Tomorrow Never Knows, it made it acceptable.
Okay.
And so, but that's why I've gone back and I've liked it a lot more.
Yeah, I gotta say, while the version on Sgt. Pepper's is ridiculously it's just cool, the version on Love with the Tomorrow Never Knows tracks, that makes it badass.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was, maybe it was recorded in India, but maybe I'm thinking of a different song of George's where he did the entire backing in India and then came to the EMI to record.
No, that's The Inner Light.
Oh, it was The Inner Light. Okay. Well, see, I often get those two a little mixed up sometimes.
They are very similar.
Right. But Within You Without You, I like, but I do, like I said, I do like it. I mean, one reason why I've often said Revolver is my favorite is because George's cuts alone are so, diverse. You've got I Want to Tell You.
Good.
Yeah, because you've got, this isn't the Revolver show. We'll do that later.
We must.
But, you've got I Want to Tell You, which is pop. Taxman, which is rock. And then Love You Too, which is Indian, which are really 3 of George's real big loves of music. So have that on one album was incredible. But Within You Without You alone, I'll take it. Sometimes I do wish on this album there was more George. But you know what? Maybe he just wasn't writing at that time.
Yeah.
But, the Beatles could have easily said, whoa, George, way too much Indian on it. We're not putting it on here. But I think as a whole, I like the song because it works with the album.
Yeah.
It's a great side 2 opener because you put it on and you kind of go, is this the Beatles?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Exactly. And I think it really shows the wisdom of all the Beatles, really, that they would let George take this leap, this dare, and say, okay, I want to have a song that features none of you guys, that features no guitar
Where you guys go home.
whatsoever. And they said, you know what? Okay. In fact, we'll help you write.
You know what? Fine.
Yeah, we'll help you write a bit of it because it's actually a Harrison, Lennon, McCartney song, I think.
What part did they write? I've never heard this before.
It had to have been just lyrics, probably.
Well, yeah. I mean, they probably didn't know anything about Indian instrumentation.
Yeah, they might have, set up a chord structure here and there, but yeah.
Right.
The song's so good.
Right, and one final note I will say, we talk about songs that we pull from the album. This is not one I will pull from the album on its own because it works in the flow of the album and the quote unquote show that it's supposed to be involved in.
Honestly, because this is technically a concept album, there isn't really any way you can pull any one song from it. I don't think.
Well,
I think it has to be listened from start to finish.
Right. That is why it is I think it's the quintessential Beatles album because it actually requires from start to finish. Again, not my favorite. But I agree, it is the quintessential.
Yes.
Okay, so we move on to the next track, which I love. I still love it to this day. When I'm 64.
This song is really cute.
Really cute. The only song from this album recorded in 66. And Paul actually wrote the song around 1960.
Oh, wow.
Because
he wrote like a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, because he's often said that he wanted to write for Frank Sinatra.
Oh.
And which I don't think Frank Sinatra ever recorded this, but we talk about Paul's diversity. You get happy-go-lucky, rock tunes, then you get this happy-go-lucky swing tune. It's like, oh, look at you, McCartney.
Look at you being all diverse and stuff.
Right, definitely. I would say influenced from his father, who was a piano player in his jazz band, I believe.
Right.
Right. I love this song. What do you think of it, Becca?
I think it's really, really cute. And it's just such a nice, happy little tune with such adorable lyrics. Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? And the whole, locking the door at 2:45. It's so freaking cute.
Yeah, you see the little old man with this kind of, oops, I stayed out a little too late again, didn't I, sweetie? I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
And, since I played clarinet in middle school and most of high school, I'm kind of required by law to love this song because all of the clarinets play on it, and it just makes me so happy.
Oh, yes.
It's a happy, happy song, and yeah, it's adorable.
Right. Again, I first heard it in Yellow Submarine, where they go through the Sea of Time. And they do that, I think, a great section where they slowly count to 64 in a very wacky way.
Yeah.
While the song is played, which, again, grew me to love the song. And if actually, we're talking about adorableness. When I was really young, and my grandmother had just turned 64, and she knew that she used to hear me sing this song because, I watched the movie way too many times, but in a good way. And I ended up calling her on her birthday when she turned 64 and sang this to her on the phone, and I'll never forget that feeling of, you're a young kid and you're already performing for people.
Yeah.
It's really cute. And one more thing that I want to say about this song, and I'm probably going to blow your mind a little bit. For anyone who has not heard the Fab Four, which is a great tribute band.
Oh, yeah.
They did a Christmas album, but they did a version. They did Christmas songs in Beatles style, and they did Santa Claus is Coming to Town, perfectly synced with When I'm 64, that it almost sounds like one song. And the first time I heard it, I was like, this is outrageous.
I definitely remember hearing that. I think recently, this past Christmas, I heard it.
Right.
Fab Four is quite talented at what they do.
Right. It is so brilliant. If anyone has not heard the Fab Four parodies, you have to.
Yeah.
They are.
Also, and just the last comment on this song, really, I would just love to have been, somewhere near Paul, or like in his head or whatever, that day he woke up and said, hey, I'm 64.
I remember people asking about that when he was in his 60s. Have you ever regretted writing it? And he said, "Oh yes."
Really?
Yeah, he said that I've regretted many times. He said, but it's not that bad because one or two people still need me.
Oh.
And I think when he was on, I think it was on Ellen or Oprah or one of those shows where he said, yeah, he said I met a lady who works at an old folks home, and she said, I play your song when I'm 64, but I changed the lyrics to when I'm 84 because they all think the 64 is young. So hopefully I'll do a re-recording of it.
Okay.
Which I thought was really funny. Now the next song, "Lovely Rita," on here, again, it's not. I won't pull it out by my own, but I like it. What do you think of the song, Becca?
It's nice. I enjoy it. It's very jaunty and fun.
It is a very fun song.
Yeah. This used to be my favorite, because I just love. First off, the way it begins is great. That's the thing about me. A song, to really get me, it has to grab my attention, and then when it's done, I don't want it to leave me wanting more. I need it. I'd like it to be to satisfy me.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of those songs that does that.
Right.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, like I do like it. I don't think it's the greatest song in the world. It fits nicely because you get When I'm 64, and then you get this also very pleasant tune.
Yeah.
I know.
It's very pleasant.
Right, and sometimes people like to nag on Paul for being cutesy, but I don't mind it, especially like the goofiness of the lyrics where he was dating a meter maid.
I believe it's a type of police woman in Britain.
Right. Even the goofy things from right before the solo, he goes, "Rita." I don't mind that. I think it's cute.
Yeah.
And of course, the piano solo I think is very well done too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The only thing about the song that kind of falls off a little bit is that the song really doesn't know how to end because it goes into that sort of like tangential, and you hear the.
Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah, it's like what the heck is that? It's
Well,
like
they're just obviously jamming on it, and hoping this is probably going to end in a fade out, but whatever.
Right, but I'm saying just Paul.
Actually,
Yeah.
you can actually hear toward the very end, you can hear George Martin calling in through the speaker from his booth and say, "All right, guys, wrap it up," sort of thing. I think he says something like "leave it," and then it ends.
Yeah, I always thought that was John Lennon. I didn't know that was George Martin.
I don't know. I think it might be. I'm not sure.
Right, but that's probably the only thing that bugged me because I thought, does Paul not know how to end his own song?
Nah, I think it ends very well.
Right, but I'll take it because you have some unfamiliar sounds with the ending, and then the beginning of the next track, it's a rooster calling, so you know what the song's going to be about.
Yeah.
The next track is "Good Morning, Good Morning."
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cool bit of trivia. While Sgt. Pepper's was being recorded by the Beatles in EMI Studios, next door, I think, in Studio 3, Pink Floyd, led by Sid Barrett, they were recording Piper at the Gates of Dawn, their debut album.
Mm-hmm.
And during a break, the Floyd happened to wander over to the Beatles booth, and where they had just finished recording "Lovely Rita," and I believe they'd finished mixing it or something. Anyway, it was in good enough form for them to be the first people outside of the Beatles and George Martin to listen to "Lovely Rita."
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And Nick Mason has said it was in fact lovely.
I didn't know that. I mean, well, I knew they were recording it, and Norman Smith, who was the Beatles engineer, also engineered that album too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. I didn't know that.
Right, and I believe they were the first people to hear anything out of Sgt. Pepper.
Well, that's not entirely true because I have a story about "Good Morning, Good Morning."
Oh, okay.
So, but before I get to that, let's introduce it. "Good Morning, Good Morning" is John's song, and I believe one of his first contributions to this album. Because the story goes, Paul was pumping out material, and John feared he was going to be underrated on this album. So he went home to record this after seeing, of all things, a cornflakes commercial.
I remember reading about that somewhere.
Right, which explains why there's the rooster at the beginning. But he recorded it. There is a demo out there, which is kind of funny to listen to because it's literally John plunking on a piano, but the piano's kind of out of tune, so it almost sounds like he's almost banging a rooster too. It's kind of funny to listen to, but when John came to record it, he has often dismissed this song since.
Yeah, he considered it a throwaway.
Well, because you got to imagine, at the same time he wrote Lucy in the Sky, Mr. Kite, and we'll get to A Day in the Life.
Yeah.
So, and I think he said if you line them up against those three, it doesn't really stand out.
It's a throwaway, but a really fun one.
Oh, yeah. And you know who really shines on this track? Ringo.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I had this on a list of best Ringo drumming songs.
I agree, man.
Because he just smacks it. And especially if you hear the anthology version, they sound like a punk band almost. They just are just slamming on it, but it's slamming on it in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's done so well, and I like the little sound effects at the end.
Yeah.
I think they're very playful.
Because the idea behind the animal sound effects that they were taking from the sound library was that they were trying to sequence the sounds so that it sounds like a chase. So you have a cat being chased by a dog, and the dog being chased by a horse or something, and you have lions in there, and then a hunting party, so it sounds like there's a general chase going on from small to big.
And then at the end, the rooster is all that's left.
Yeah.
And
I do agree this song is kind of a throwaway. I really do like it.
It's very fun.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs on the album. Pretty much anything that John did on this album is one of my favorites.
The only thing against the song I would say is that I don't like that it's sequenced at the end.
I might agree that it should be somewhere else, but I think it's very good where it is.
Right. And I do like, just to clarify for folks who don't know, some Britishisms, what was it, Time for Tea, and Meet the Wife was a British TV show. I'm not sure if it was a sitcom or a drama.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because I always thought that was kind of a little bit of an odd line, but it was in fact a TV show that aired usually in the morning.
There you go.
So when John says it's time for tea and meet the wife, also the kind of the little pun in the middle, watching the skirts, you start to flirt, now you're in gear. I thought it was a very fun pun because, again, Britishism, gear was a British term that meant, fab or cool.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool because, he's driving around, so I thought that was kind of cool to use that pun, you're in gear. I thought, very cheeky, John.
Also, it's kind of a little well-known fact that the guitar solo in the middle, played by Paul, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah, Taxman is also played by Paul, so you can kind of hear the progression there, the similar tone that he puts on the guitar and the way he plays it.
Oh, poor George.
Hey, you know what?
But,
I would go with the assumption that they really liked the tone that Paul would come up with for this.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just a blistering solo, and it's awesome.
Right. And then the next track, which would have been the album closer, but John came up with the final song at the end, but we'll get to that. The Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band reprise, which I thought was very, very clever because even nowadays, a lot of albums don't really have reprises on it.
Yeah, because you get this sort of feeling that, I've heard this song before. We don't need to revisit it.
Right. But again, like I said, I like it. I like the fact that it brings everything back together and says, hey, everybody, thanks for, I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll do one last number, but we got to go. Yeah. And I think everything is done very well. I like I love the harmonies on it.
Yeah.
I even like the bit where they're singing really fast. Sgt. Pepper's One and Only Lonely Hearts Club Band to get everything in there. That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great idea to have the reprise. I think it was Neil Aspinall's idea. He was a good friend of the Beatles and a business partner.
Right.
And this really ties up the whole concept album, that this is a show. This whole thing you've been listening to is a kind of a live-ish show that you've been in attendance.
Right, and even Paul himself has used this towards the end of his concerts.
Yeah.
going into the end right afterwards, decides to say, hey everybody, again, thanks for coming out. We'll do one more number for you, but we got to go.
Right.
Which I saw. I think he did it both times I saw him. He did. That was the ending song, and as soon as you started it, you were kind of a little bit sad.
Yeah.
Because you know that he's not coming out for another encore.
Yeah.
Right. But like I said, I really like it. Was there anything you guys wanted to say to this song?
Not really.
Okay. Well then, shall we move on to the masterpiece?
We shall.
The next song needs no introduction. It's well, we should probably give an introduction anyway. It is A Day in the Life, the final song on this album, kind of co-written by John and Paul, which crossfades very nicely into from the Sgt. Pepper's Reprise into this. Now, I gotta say, we talked about how Lennon is very underrated on this album in terms of quantity, but the fact that he leaves you with this is just masterful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Garrett.
I mean, you listen to this song and you, like right after that, you immediately think, okay, this was conceptually a head and shoulders above pretty much everything else on the album. Just the fact that it's so very deep and you can get so much out of it on repeat listens is amazing. I mean, this is constantly rated as the best Beatles song in their entire catalog, and for very good reason. Because it is one of these very rare occurrences of true genius that only comes about very rarely. It really is I honestly think it's one of the greatest achievements of humankind. Sorry if I'm kind of overdoing this.
Well, it's okay.
It cannot be overdone, really.
Yeah, it's good to be passionate. What do you think, Becca?
It's a beautiful, beautiful song. It's one of those songs that's like, it's given credit as like one of the best songs ever made, ever. And a lot of times I think, yeah, okay, whatever, with songs like that. But this song is truly a masterpiece.
Oh, yes, and I agree. Like, I've seen this on so many lists, and I'll go, yeah, it's accepted. And then when I go back and listen to it,
Listen to it, and you're like, holy hell. This is every bit as beautiful as everyone makes it out to be. To need that reminder.
Oh, definitely. And I think the point that they are trying to make is because it is the last song on the album, and I think it's good because it kind of relates to everyday life. Because imagine you're at the show and you just saw all these songs or all these performances that kind of were either very personal or had nothing to do with, that were just very out there. But this one kind of brings it into modern day life. Like, this is a song for the everyman, even though we know that it's really about specific incidents. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think John got it from a newspaper, and he wrote the song around it. And I think it was Paul's idea to put the two songs together because, because if I'm not mistaken, there are two separate songs, but I don't think we've ever really heard the different two separate songs by themselves. I mean, you can kind of take them apart, but they work so well together.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially, and you hear all kinds of weird trivia things about this song that make you think this is truly one of those moments where all the things lined up. Like the alarm clock in the middle of the song right before Paul starts his bit. That was an accident. They were using the alarm clock to help time the orchestral crescendo that happened right before that. They got it in on time and everything, except they just couldn't manage to take the alarm clock out of the mix. And then right after that, Paul talks about waking up. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's great.
It's great.
You hear that and you think it was completely intentional.
I would agree. And hearing both of those songs together, I mean, frankly, if you're not paying attention, you may actually forget that those are two separate songs.
Yeah.
Because you're grooving along to it, and the first song kind of fades out a bit and then goes smack into the orchestral crescendo, and then right smack into Paul's part, and then right smack back into John's part again.
Yeah.
And if you're not paying attention, you may have thought that you were just listening to, like, I don't know, like a piece of classical music that just kind of went on its own.
Into a different movement and then back into the original theme, yeah.
Right, which I thought was done so well. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the whole intent for the crescendo was everyone start at their lowest note and then go to their high one in a matter of, what was it, like 20 measures or something like that?
Something like that, yes.
Right, and they had to get there at a certain time, and that's why there's the alarm clock.
Right.
To say get here before. And I think it's on the anthology, you can hear George Martin counting measure by measure.
Yeah, you can actually hear that on some versions of the original Day in the Life. The master version, you can hear a count off as the right before, I think, the crescendo begins and ends. And so, yeah, this song, there's not really everything has been said about it, and yet not nearly enough has been either.
Oh yes, I thought it was very.
Like we just have to talk about the end, man.
Right. Do you want to go ahead and give that away?
Man, with the, you hear the last verse and everything, and you're contemplating, what does John mean? I'd love to turn you on, and you're just kind of going, this song is so much for me, and then the orchestra comes in, and it starts building and everything, and you hear the cymbals start crashing randomly, and you're like, oh geez, oh geez, oh geez, oh geez, and it ends, bam.
Yeah, 3 pianos being played.
That chord,
yeah.
That chord is everything ever.
Right.
So perfect.
It's like, how we were talking in the Quadrophenia episode of Record Rant that Roger Daltrey and Love Reign Over Me talking about how he wanted to cram every human emotion he could into that scream at the end. That's kind of like this chord here.
Yeah.
It's the grand finish, because when the song starts, it's the last song, and it starts very soft, so you think, oh, this is nice, isn't this pleasant? And then it, like you said, it builds and builds, and the fact that it ends on that note, and it takes like 20 seconds to fade, it's like almost had a heart attack, and then you calm down from it, and you go, whew, that was good.
Yeah.
And
and it was interesting, the chord they chose. They could have chosen, I think it was an E minor chord they chose.
I think it was an E major, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it logically would have actually gone to, I think it was a C. If you listen, to the song itself, it could logically have gone to a C, but they instead chose an E, which not so much an ending as much as an inevitable surrender.
Right. I wonder why they did that. I wonder what prompted them to change their minds.
Well, because the feel was better, I guess, with the E. And I agree. I couldn't possibly envision it any other way.
I certainly agree, but you talk about the final chord, and all the interesting trivia that's gone on. There's a rumor that they turned the mics up so high to record that chord that you could almost hear the air conditioners blowing in the studio.
No, what you can hear, and I've heard this, you can hear someone shifting papers, and you can hear a chair squeak.
See, I've heard the songs for years, and I don't notice it.
Yeah, you've got to turn your volume up as well as the chord fades.
Yeah, and I think Paul was actually angry about that.
I would be too, but once it's that far into the chord, and then you hear just a couple of sound effects, barely. If you're looking for them, you'll find them. It's a very small nitpick.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I haven't heard it, but hopefully, when I turn the volume up, I will get to hear it. Interesting note on this song and Good Morning, Good Morning, the Beatles, while they were working, they actually invited the newly famous monkeys into the studio to watch them. and if you watch the anthology, when you see the footage of the studio working on Day in the Life, you see Mike Nesmith in there talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen that before, and I was like,
yeah, when I saw it,
I'd be excited. I was like, oh my god, it's Mike.
Right, when I saw that for the first time, I had to rewind and go, wait, what?
Yeah.
That was so cool. And Mickey Dolenz visited the studio while they were working on Good Morning, Good Morning. And the story goes is that he actually brought an autograph book and got really dressed up because he was going to meet the Beatles. And then he walked in and there were just a bunch of, mid-aged guys just casually working in the studio, and he was the odd man out.
Okay.
Hi everyone, this is Tom from Triple Threat with a quick message. Be sure to join me, Becca, and Garrett next episode, episode 9, for part 2 of our look at Tommy by The Who, released in 1969. In a previous show, episode 6, we covered the first part of the album and stopped halfway through the song list. In part 2, we'll pick up where we left off, and then as always, we'll rate the album in our own unique ways. It's all on a brand new episode of Triple Threat that you won't want to miss of us talking about Tommy. And now, back to the show. So we've covered the album, but we want to get to some little bits in here, starting with if you have the CD of the album and A Day in the Life Ends, the track, there's a couple of, what would you say, kind of gibberish noises?
Well, yeah. The Beatles intentionally went in and said, let's just give them a little something that would make anyone who doesn't have an auto return on their record player go, what the hell is this noise?
Right, and just to let folks know, an auto return is a function on a record player where at the end of the record, the needle will lift and return to the resting place. If not, there's something called a run-out groove, which the needle will play infinitely until you literally have to get up and lift it.
Yeah, and so they would play this loop of nonsense that the Beatles went in and said, we're going to record some gibberish. And then Paul said, how about we have a little satanic message on top of that? If you play it backward, it supposedly says, yeah, we'll all be magic supermen.
I never caught that. To me, it's
that either.
Yeah, to me, it's just words. Well, there's like 25 voices. You can't really pick out one.
Yeah.
But I think John actually said, let's give a noise to annoy the listener's dog. And that's why you have that really high-pitched tone right before the voices come in. So if you have the CD, you get it on a loop. I think it loops for about maybe 30 seconds and then just casually fades out.
Yeah.
And also, we may want to mention that A Day in the Life on the Blue album, the 67 to 70, the Day in the Life is featured without the crossfade from the Sgt. Pepper reprise. So you get the straight-ahead song from the opening strum, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Especially when you think... and you kind of get that on the Love album as well. I think they don't do anything with the song that wasn't already on the Sgt. Pepper album, which is different for the Love album.
Right. I think they just remixed a couple things and made some things louder.
Just made it a little bit, brought the mix up, make it a little bit clearer. And they also add at the beginning some studio chatter about, we got to put the mics in these old pianos, that sort of thing. And you can hear John obviously holding his guitar, I think, to begin the song. And he counts it off to himself with the rhythm, Sugar Plum Fairy, Sugar Plum Fairy.
Which I thought was very cheeky.
Well, yeah.
So John. But we want to get to some songs that were left off the album, starting with what would have been George's second contribution, Only a Northern Song.
So good.
Oh, I've grown to like that song a lot.
I love that song so much. George is the best.
It's kind of like the Beatles version of the Saucer Full of Secrets by Pink Floyd,
I never thought of it that way.
Because they're playing stuff that it shouldn't go together and sound good, and yet it does.
Right. And just to let folks know, if you want to hear the working version, you can pick it up on the Anthology 2. There's the, what would you call it, the Sgt. Pepper version. And then I think the Beatles tweaked it up for release a year later, when it was released on the soundtrack to the Yellow Submarine movie. Which, by the way, that segment in the movie, I loved as a kid. I loved watching all the visuals and all the lights flashing.
Yeah.
So that would have been George's second contribution, but it was left out. I don't know the exact reasons. You can go online and look it up. And the second song that we want to get to is a song that has yet to still see a release. It was an experimental piece called Carnival of Light.
I have heard so much about this.
Right.
I've actually heard it.
Right. For those who don't know what it is, it was recorded in January of '67. I believe it was for some kind of light show. I'm not entirely too sure about the specifics of it. I do know that it was meant to be included on Anthology 2, but George sadly rejected it. Then Paul has said he would like to see it still get released. But if you go on YouTube, it's weird because on YouTube it's hard to tell which version is the right version because people keep claiming it is. No one except for those at the light show really know what it sounded like.
Yeah.
And let's face it, the people at that light show probably weren't aware of it either. They're probably rolling some doobies.
I don't even remember it.
Yeah, no one can remember it. Or
There was Carnival of Light? The hell?
Yeah. So if you want to read all about that song, you can pick up any Beatle book and see why it's the only Beatles song that people want to hear about. But from what I've heard about it, and if this experimental piece, I'd be interested to hear it, but I don't know if I'd love it.
Yeah.
Because
It's like 14 minutes long.
yeah, if it's gonna be Experimental's Revolution number 9, I think I'll listen to it once and then put it away.
Oh yeah.
I really won't listen to it much. So that's our look at the album. As we mentioned before, this album has been highly anticipated and highly praised. Rolling Stone put it at number 1 of their list of 500 albums of all time. Time Magazine put it in their list of 100 greatest albums. Pitchfork.com listed as one of their favorites too. Basically, yeah. So basically, on any website, you are going to find this album, in any of their lists.
Near the top, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much near the top. Mickey Dolenz. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something, Becca?
It's probably safe to say that this album changed the course of any kind of music that comes out of the 20th century.
Yep.
Right, and I think that's why I say I love it, but it's not my favorite. But that's just me as a fan. I love the fact that it pretty much changed music. I love the fact. It doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. Like when we'll give our ratings, you'll see how much we really love this album.
Yeah.
Mickey Dolenz himself has said it is the greatest album in his opinion, and he's not biased because he actually saw it come together. No pun intended. And also, on another note, we want to mention how much the Beach Boys really influenced this album. Because a year earlier, in '66, Brian Wilson and his boys heard Rubber Soul and thought, we got to do something better than that. And they came up with Pet Sounds, which I'm going to tell you right now, folks, for years and years, I said that was the greatest album of all time. The first time I heard it, I was completely speechless.
Yeah, man, a lot of people would actually agree with you.
Uh-huh.
Right. It came out, the Beatles heard it, they loved it. Paul and John called Brian to say how much they liked it, and Paul has said many times that Pet Sounds was a really big influence on this album because Brian Wilson was really experimenting with different sounds, different effects, and the Beatles were already doing that, but when they heard Brian, who was the happy-go-lucky Beach Boy surf guy, they said, oh my God, if this guy can do it, think about what we can use, what different sounds we can use. I don't think the Beatles have pointed to any individual tracks that it influenced, but it's generally accepted that Pet Sounds was inspired Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah. I know Paul has said that his favorite song of all time is God Only Knows.
Oh, God help me. I love that song.
Such a good song.
And which also inspired the Beatles to mix this album in mono, because Pet Sounds came out only in mono because that's how Brian Wilson wanted people to hear it, because he's also deaf in one ear. Oh yeah, it's true. So that's why he mixed it in mono. A lot of fans were upset when Pet Sounds was released also in stereo, but that inspired the Beatles to mix Sgt. Pepper in mono too, to get that Pet Sounds sound and feel to it. So, which is why, and also Pet Sounds, Rolling Stone put it as number 2 of the greatest albums of all time, and deservedly so, which is why if you love Sgt. Pepper, if you think it is the greatest album of all time or one of them, there's no reason you cannot like Pet Sounds. It is phenomenal. It is so... it's underrated now because Sgt. Pepper gets bopped over our head as the greatest album of all time.
Because the Beatles.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, because of...
have been legitimately established as the greatest band of all time.
Right.
At least successful, anyway.
Right. So which is why, you know, when if people have not heard Pet Sounds and they love Sgt. Pepper, I would recommend go out and get that and make the comparison, and you'll hear two absolutely fantastic works of art.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So let's get to rating this album in our own little ways. Would anyone like to go first?
Yeah. So I would say this album is definitely an album, like we said, that has to be listened to start to finish, which for most of the time is a pretty good thing. It works best as a whole, not as cherry picking tracks. You know, like we said, it's definitely not my favorite album. It doesn't have some of my favorite tracks on it, but there are definitely some I could look at and go, yeah. So I would give this 4.5 out of 5 TARDISes.
Very nice. Okay. So, Becca, do you want to go next?
I can't really think of any numerical ranking system that's really creative at all. So I'm just going to say, on a scale from 1 to good, this album's pretty good.
So when you say pretty good, is that a little bit below good?
It's like, just, okay, maybe I should use a better adjective. On a scale from 1 to the best thing I've ever heard in my life, it's very, very few notches under best thing I've ever heard in my life. Because again, it's fantastic, but there are other shining moments on other things here and there that I do prefer. But as a whole, as an album, and as what it did for music, it's fantastic.
Okay, and for me, I will give it. Oh, it's so hard again to give it, numerical, because I went into this thinking, almost, oh, we're just talking about Sgt. Pepper. Yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. Listen to it again. I really enjoyed it. It made me really, again, we talk about how maybe it's overrated, but when you listen to it, you just kind of forget about it, and all the criticism just goes away. At least for me. So out of 64 peppers, I'm gonna easily give it 64.
There you go.
Yeah.
Peppers. 64 peppers.
So.
Here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So again, that doesn't mean it's the greatest album of all time. I have a different one, and yeah. But I really enjoyed this album. It is the quintessential Beatles album. To me, it's their best. Again, not my favorite, because to me, those are two different things.
You're correct, actually. I understand that sentiment.
Right,
Yeah.
So, like I said, out of 64 peppers, I will easily give it 64.
We're peppers!
Okay.
All right.
So, that's our look at Sgt. Pepper. What do you think? Yeah. So what do you think out there? Do you think that we got it all right? Do you think we got it all wrong? Do you think one of us got it wrong? God forbid it's me.
That could not have possibly been me.
Right. You can write to us. We will put a link.
We're lonely.
Yeah, we will put a link. Just get out a pen and paper and write to all three of us in different states.
Send it via carrier pigeon.
Yeah.
Like birds.
We will.
64 Charlton.
Yeah. And
Farm.
yeah, and you can write to us at 123 fake. Oh, damn it. But we will put a link attached to this episode where you can write to us and tell us what you think of the album. We'll also put a link to places like Amazon where you can go out and buy it if you haven't already. And you listen to this, then what the hell did you just spend the last 2 hours listening to? Okay, so that's from all of us. Everyone, go ahead and say goodbye.
Toodaloo.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody, and we hope that you enjoyed the show. Another pun there, but we'll let that. Yeah, but we'll let that one go. Good night, everybody.
Any other way. Never could be any other way.
Yeah. Good night, everybody. And that's a wrap on our conversation about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. Be sure to favorite this episode if you liked it, and check out the other episodes of the show at our website, www.mixcloud.com/triplethread, where you can also leave show comments and feedback. And be sure to catch Garrett's new show, Amazing Journey, at www.mixcloud.com/amazing-journey, and leave him show comments and feedback as well. So, from all of us at Triple Threat, thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Which will be 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 which will be